a camera phone experience that made you think, okay, you know what, this is really getting real now?
Okay, so I think up till about 2015, 2016, I was primarily using the phone as, just capturing daily things. I would always have my camera in the bag, right? Back in 2016, I was invited for the launch of a Sony Xperia. You know how confusing the Xperia names have been over the years. So this was
Oh yeah.
Xperia 2, 3, I have no idea. Anyway, so it was a Sony Xperia. They invited us to Udaipur. They gave us the phones a day prior to go and shoot and just figure out the camera. And it's the first time I used a phone like a camera on assignment, like with intent and not just a casual snapshot. I was actually looking to make good photos with it. And the realization didn't hit me then. The realization hit me past sunset when I went back to my hotel room, copied the files to my laptop and opened those files on my laptop. Okay. It's the first time I was actually opening phone photos on a large screen. And this is 6 years ago, and I was genuinely blown away 6 years ago. Okay. And from there, I have now, over the last 6 years, I think easily done about 10 to 15 campaigns just with phone cameras. And every passing year has just been a revelation for me. But that was the first time. I'll vividly remember this. There was a backlit shot of a sunset of the palace and a couple of pigeons flying in the air, etc. I could not believe how good it looked on my laptop screen. And that's also when I realized that we're doing a great injustice to phones in general, because we take great photos but we always see them on these tiny
Smaller
five and a
screens.
half to 6 inch
Yeah.
screens. Yeah. And I don't know how many of us even print our phone photos, because we don't even think of it, right? But there is a lot of good stuff we are actually shooting, I think, subconsciously, without even recognizing the quality of these images.
What kind of campaigns did you end up shooting on phones?
Oh, the first big one I did was again for after that Sony Blitz was one for Google, where we made a series of short films on how to maximize usage of your pixel. This was during the first lockdown during the pandemic, and it was shot literally completely run and gun guerrilla style. But the biggest advantage there, I mean, we ended up creating a database of about 200 photos in various lighting conditions, various genres, including family portraits, fashion portraits, landscapes, night shots, astro, you name it. Okay. Now, in all of this, I think the biggest deal was that the sheer quality of the images. Okay. Not just on the laptop screen, but the final edits and the way they were presented. And I mean, the way they looked was just mind blowing for me. That's 200 images. Just so you know, the entire campaign, all through, we were shooting in what Google calls computational raw. Okay. Which is basically, it is mashing in multiple images to give you this one raw file, which now happens on the iPhone as well. I think they call it Pro Raw.
Pro
Um,
Raw. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Um, the I think the mind blowing thing for me was I would pull that image into Lightroom. Just the previous day, I would have edited something from an assignment where I'm working with these Sony Alpha 7, whatever is the that time ka model with with it's like full frame files, 50 megapixels each image, etc. Okay. And then right after, I would put the same preset on these Chotu smartphone photos, and it all looked the same. I could pull the
Yeah.
same amount of highlights, the same amount of shadows. It's mind boggling. The size of the sensor is about 1/8 or 1/6 that of the Sony professional camera that I'm shooting with. And the fact that you're pulling so much information out of it is just mind blowing. Yeah, and since then I've shot a lot with Oppo. In the last 12 months, I have shot artists such as fire breathers, so which means that there's a high dynamic range that you're shooting, because you've got fire on one end of their face and you have the same highlights on their face needs to be equally exposed. I've shot a bartender. I've shot an entire automobile of like a proper stylistic video, almost looking like an ad, all with a phone, uh, and so much more, man. So much more. It's. I've used the phone a lot. Let me put it that way. But it's. We'll talk about this, or I can tell you right now. I think the biggest difference is that when I treat the phone like a camera every time, I immediately see the advantages, but I also immediately see the disadvantages. Okay, the weaknesses of the cameras of the phone camera really comes out when I push it to the limit. But on an everyday basis, it's a completely different device. I think you would know this, having done so many photography campaigns as well.
Yeah.
um, when you treat this device seriously, it starts to fall apart. But when you treat it like literally to capture daily life, it's something else.
I remember this phase when six,
Hmm.
7 years back when DSLRs, or even earlier, like suddenly the hobby was really picking up, right? When
Hmm. Hmm.
a lot of the DSLRs became around 50, 60 grand.
Hmm.
And so many people were just buying cameras as a hobby, which is great. Like I
Hmm.
got into photography as a career only because it was a hobby.
Hmm.
And I just think today that hobby element is so easily accessible that somewhere it's getting lost. People are not
Yeah.
realizing what a great hobby this can be, just because
Yeah.
it's so that power, that photography power, so easily available that somewhere you perhaps might just take it for granted. Uh,
Correct.
my
Hmm.
first experience when I got really blown away with a phone camera was the iPhone 4S.
Hmm.
I was shooting an assignment in Italy on a Hasselblad H4D. It had
Hmm.
that Hasselblad H4D had just come out to the point that the
Hmm.
Hasselblad team met me at the airport in Italy and gave me that piece of kit.
Hmm.
And just for fun,
Hmm.
I'm taking pictures on the iPhone 4S.
Hmm.
And much later, Cox and Kings had got in touch with me and said, "Can we do an exhibition of your pictures?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So
Hmm.
alongside some of the Hasselblad prints, there were some iPhone prints,
Wow.
and I
Hmm.
actually put out that saying these are phone prints, and then I end up
Hmm.
shooting. I done a few assignments for GQ, and I never told
Hmm.
them these are from the phone till they got published, and only way later I was like, that was camera, that was the iPhone. So yeah, it's just I think in the right environment, it can really
Yes,
work.
especially if you're like us and you walked into sets, right, which are lit so well, which is
Yeah,
so much beauty there. It's, I mean, most of the people tuning in would not have experienced this, but if you're walking onto a well lit set, or basically any kind of, I won't even say set, any kind of frame that has been made with the intent of being photographed, right? There's very little difference between the
yeah.
big, I mean, it's literally today, though, in 2022, it's now down to minor, like subtle differences, which only the pros will catch on to. It's that tough now, especially when you talk of flagship cameras and their portrait modes and